Hello and welcome to CIPD Bitesize. In this video, we're going to be looking at part 2 of the Wellbeing at Work 50SO7 module. And in this module, you work for InsurerSafe. So a little bit about this part 2 is part 2, you should respond to questions 7 to 10. So there's 4 questions in this part, and responses should relate specifically to InsurerSafe, the case study provided. To help the reader, please make use of headings as assessment criteria, references, signpost criteria being addressed. You should also ensure that any references or sources are drawn up and acknowledged correctly and supported in a big bibliography. You work for InsurerSafe. That's the main thing that you need to take away from this. You work for InsurerSafe. Okay? You work for InsurerSafe. Now, in part 2 of this assessment, you get 1,900 words. You have 4 questions. That equates to 475 words per assessment criteria. So you have some change in the bank to what you're used to. Normally, you're functioning around about the 300 word. However, one of these questions is very, very chunky. So you may want to try and stick within your 300 words per assessment criteria limit. You'll know which one it is. It's AC3.2. It's an absolute corker of a question, and therefore you probably want to save yourself some words for that. So let's go into this one. This one is, and remember, you work for InsurerSafe. AC3.1, assess InsurerSafe's needs in relation to employee well-being and identifying 2 well-being initiatives that would help address these needs. Now, if you watch the overarching summary video, you'll see that there's a load of graphs, there's a load of charts, there's a load of intro. We don't really cover that in bite size. We're just focusing on the AC 1.3. But if you don't have that in front of you, I would recommend getting a CIPD learner assessment brief. I would recommend going back to those videos and looking at some of the graphs and charts and demographics and the problems that the organization's facing, because you're trying to identify 2 well-being initiatives that would address the needs of InsurerSafe, because you work for InsurerSafe. So if you look at the marking guide word, that is identify well-being initiatives in relation to the organization's needs. But as you can see, the question that they give you in this really sort of helps direct you to where you need to go. You're assessing InsurerSafe's need in relation to employee well-being and identifying 2 well-being initiatives that would address the needs. So looking at the data that they give you in the case study, assess and identify 2 ways that you could address this issue. So let's break it down as we always do, which is assessing the verb. If you don't address the verb, you don't pass the question. So you always need to ensure that you're addressing the verb. The needs, so these are the things that the organization needs to do to improve employee well-being and identify 2 well-being initiatives. So you need multiple initiatives to be able to answer this question correctly. Now, and you've got 475 words. I would try and shoot for about 300 words. Now let's break down the question a little bit. Assess to judge or decide the amount of value, quality, or importance of something. So my well-being idea 1 or my well-being initiative 1, my well-being initiative 2 would be my 2 subheadings for this, and I would have about 375 words per subheading to sort of build it out. You can pass, now my study tip for this one is, can you pass the prove it test? So using the data that you've got, using the research that you're going to get from doing this module, can you prove that this addresses a need in relation to what the organization wants? So is there data, is there stats, is there evidence, is there case studies, is there information that can help you prove that what you're saying is not just your opinion, but has quality and importance behind it? So I would always ensure that you've got the right references and the right things in place to ensure that you can get through this one. Now, some recommended reading that we've got for this particular one is the CIPD Guide, People Management Guide to Managing Stress at Work. CIPD Fact Sheet, which is mental health in the workplace, and People Management, how to create a mental health and well-being program that works. These are our recommended resources that we recommend that you read to address this question. This is not me telling you how to interpret the data that is in part 1. That is for you to interpret and for you to decide. However, as you can see, there's quite a lot of mental health and managing stress, because that comes out quite a lot within the documentation. Not giving anything away by giving you that, but you have to analyze the data. You have to make the decisions based on the resources, and you have to build out the answer based on this. So I'm not going to give you the answer to this, because that's not what Bitesize is about. Bitesize is just about pointing you in the direction. And the direction is mental health, The direction is going back to the graphs, the surveys, and the case study. And the answer is coming up with 2 initiatives and building your work that way in a prove it mentality. How do you prove that you're right with data, case studies, and statistics? And that's what's going to be critical in terms of getting you through. Now, one of the other things that we do to sort of help you contextualize the question is we give you a fictitious scenario, and we do this so that you can try and come at the question from a different direction, so that you're not just stuck on the question going, what does it mean, what does it mean, what does it mean? So what we do is we create a bit of a fictitious story to sort of let you hear about the solution in a completely different guise, in a completely different way. So, and for this fictitious scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to turn me into a kangaroo. Yep. Now, yes, we're going to turn me into a kangaroo. That was me just turning off the phone that was ringing at the same time. So, the Australian outback shimmered under the merciless sun. Kevin, the kangaroo, a notoriously jumpy sort, was bouncing around, his tail a blur of anxiety. Can't take it anymore, he shrieked. The endless red dirt, those pesky flies, the constant threat of dingoes. My paws are trembling. I haven't slept properly in weeks. The other kangaroos, bless their hopping hearts, were concerned. Kevin, boomed Barry, the wisest old kangaroo, you're clearly suffering from outback burnout. We need to implement some well-being initiatives. The other kangaroos, a motley crew of retirees, fitness fanatics, and social butterflies, got to work. The retirees, led by Agnes, who swore by eucalyptus tea, suggested Mindfulness Mondays program. They'd gather under the shade of a gum tree, close their eyes, and listen to the soothing sounds of the didgeridoo. The fitness fanatics headed to the ever-energetic Sheila, proposed kangaroo kickboxing, a vigorous exercise routine guaranteed to release endorphins and ward off those pesky dingoes. The social butterflies, championed by Gregorius Greg, organised hopping happy hour, casual get-togethers where kangaroos could share stories, gossip, and enjoy a refreshing puddle of water. At first, Kevin scoffed mindfulness, kickboxing, happy hour, and his vacation to Hawaii with unlimited carrot sticks, but slowly he began to see the benefits. The Mindfulness Mondays helped him calm his racy thoughts. The kangaroo kickboxing provided a much-needed outlet for his pent-up energy, and the hopping happy hours reminded him that he wasn't alone in his struggles. Gradually, Kevin's anxieties began to subside. He started sleeping better. His jumps retained their spring and even began to appreciate the beauty of the outback. He learned that true well-being wasn't about escaping his problems, but finding a healthy way to cope with them within his own environment. So the analogy here is to focus on the kangaroos, is obviously the employees, the outback is the workplace environment, and outback burnout is job stress, burnout, mental health issues, which obviously we've referenced a couple of times in this. Well-being initiatives like mental health programs, employee assistance programs, social events, stress management workshops are all designed in ways that you can try and build camaraderie in a team and help people find solutions in a slower, more consistent way. Just like the kangaroos, organizations need to identify needs of their employees, implement targeted well-being initiatives. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, which won't work. And whether it's exercise classes, social events, the goal is to create a healthy and supportive working environment where employees can thrive and feel part of communities and part of a group coming together to achieve something that's bigger than potentially themselves in terms of, like, if you think about health and well-being and stuff like that, how do we help other people succeed? And that's kind of what I want you to take. Now, remember, you work for InsurerSafe, but how can you foster that community within InsurerSafe? How can you help people identify these different things in your 2 well-being initiatives? What data can you have to answer this question, to back up your thoughts and your theories? How can you take an anxious kangaroo and make it calm? And that's the key to this question. Absolutely best of luck with this one, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.